Great job again by Robrick to tie the record. I wanted to mention this in the last we were talking before is that I would love for someone who's smarter than us about when it comes to scouting to be like, where does this class from the Ice Dogs rank among the overall OHL? Because we've had 4 16-year-olds in the lineup pretty much from start to finish, and Robrick's about to break the all-time rookie record for Ice Dogs. He's already broke the 16-year-old one. You've got Zotto, who's becoming a much better defensive player. Frolov hasn't missed a beat and has been great for the most part defensively. And Gallianov has been a real engine. It strikes me as stunning to see that 4 16-year-olds have had an impact, and that just goes to shout out to the scouting staff for the Ice Dogs, because one more year, if they have a year where it's anything close to that, let's say we get a lottery pick, we don't make the playoffs and we end up with maybe first overall, right? We're still ways away from knowing kind of who would be in the mix for that. But still, I think they're not going to have 2 first-round picks. They'll only have 1. But if they can have a 2 or 3 players hit like they did this year, we're looking at a real strong team where it's not just about just getting in; it's being in 4th and 5th, and it's exciting. I just wanted to give a quick shout out to them in that, because we've talked about it quite a bit. But I would love for an OHL scout or someone even in an NHL scout to be like, that's impressive, because I don't think they get enough credit.
Yeah, I mean, we had Adam Henrich on the show at their monthly wrap-up last month, and he talked about what he saw from a couple of those players, and we know that how important it was for them to hit on those guys, and they're going to need to hit on another draft class here, like you said, to really restock the pipeline here of making this into a competitive franchise year in and year out that has NHL drafted talent on it, because we've talked about it on the past of how important it's going to be for Kevin He to break that glass ceiling for the Ice Dogs that has kind of been there since 2019. And for Ryan to continue to push that open the year after. But we're going to need to have some other players that are looked at, and like you mentioned, having some scouts in the building will hopefully be a big thing when they're there watching some of those guys that do get drafted, that that there is other talent that's worth looking at here with the Ice Dogs that could potentially become pro hockey players.
Well, that's the thing. I think that something that isn't talked about is that when you're in this stage of the franchise, and this happens in the OHL to every team, they go through the 3-year windows, and sometimes the downward spin of that doesn't last long. Like London, for example, they just don't miss ever. But we'll see even Windsor. So Windsor's having a terrible season. In retrospective to last year, where they looked like they might win the OHL championship and obviously got knocked out in the first round, but they went all in, right? The thing is that they're going to have 2 players drafted probably in the first round of the NHL in Greentree and the second one's escaping me.
Christoforo.
Yes. And who are very highly ranked in this year's NHL draft, right? That isn't a luxury the Ice Dogs have this year. Kevin is going to get drafted, but it more than likely won't be in the first or second round. So that means that every time that the Ice Dogs, because you can't trade a first round pick, you've got a 1 in 20 shot of really getting someone that player can't miss, because it doesn't make the prior year a waste, but it makes it very difficult when your first round doesn't misses. So guys like Robrick and Zada, they've got so much more pressure on them because, I'm sure that it's not hung on them, but that's just the reality of the situation. If they miss on a first that's high when they have these picks, Henrich talked about it when we were talking to him, you can't miss on these because those, you don't know how often you're going to get a top 4 pick in the OHL, a lottery pick, right? So again, it's a lot of stress in this summer, because this summer, more than last year, is a real one where the Ice Dogs are not going to be the afterthought in the Eastern Conference anymore. We've heard it on other OHL podcasts. It will not be that, specifically from the coach down. He will not allow it. So it's going to be a very intense, draft in that aspect, because whoever we get has got to come in and really fill a need that the Ice Dogs have. So again, I just wanted to give that quick shout out to the scouting staff, because I've only been following the OHL like this for this season, right? Prior years I was just a fan, so I can't see many times that 4 16-year-olds come in and have an impact where they would make the roster of other OHL teams. That's what I kind of went with this. It's not that they're just impact for the Ice Dogs. Like Gallianov, Frolov, as well as Zada and Robrick are probably going to make the majority of OHL teams, and that's impressive to do so.
and they hit on Kevin He as a second rounder. I mean, that is
if they didn't have Kevin, man, that's scary to think about because, yeah, you're right. If they did not hit on Kevin this season and going forward, we're looking at waiting till next year till Robrick, has a chance to get in there. And I don't know. That's scary to think about.
Yeah, Kevin He was a second round pick, so we talk about the pressure on him if he would have been a first round pick. But obviously,
I think we
know
saw
what happened
it too.
With that.
I think we saw it the first 15 games of the season. He did not look like himself. He looked like he was trying to go 1-on-4 every shift, and it wasn't until maybe the coaching change. That kind of seems to be, if you go back and look at his stats, like that's where the change happens. But yeah, those guys at the top end of a team that where like they can't have a decline. The same thing as Robert going to next year. While he had a great rookie season, he can't drop in points, for example. He's got to really, elevate even further, which I think he will.